Hi, I'm Cyndee, and I'm going to read a book to you today. The book I'm going to read is Elizabeti's Doll by Stephanie Stuve-Bodeen, and Christy Hale is the illustrator. That means that she painted the pictures for the book. Let me show you something that I really think is clever that Christy Hale did. She did a picture on the front of the book, like you'd expect, but then if you open the back cover, it's an extension of the picture. It's just continued on the back, so it's one big painting. This is Elizabeti on the front, and we'll find out that it's her mom and brother on the other part of the picture, on the back side. Elizabeti's Doll. Elizabeti is a girl who lives in Tanzania in East Africa. Maybe your family can help you find East Africa on a map. It's far away from Washington. Elizabeti's Doll. Elizabeti had a new baby brother named Obedi. Elizabeti watched Mama take care of Obedi, and she wanted to care for her own baby. I bet her mama let her help sometimes with baby Obedi, but she wanted her own. She didn't have a doll, so she went outside and picked up a stick. She tried to hug it, but it poked her, and she dropped it on the ground. I think I would do the same thing. Then Elizabeti picked up a rock. It was just the right size to hold, and it didn't poke Elizabeti when she hugged it. She kissed the rock and named it Ava. When baby Obedi had a bath, he splashed and got Mama all wet. But when baby Ava had a bath, she behaved very nicely and only splashed a little. Mama fed Obedi, and he gave a very loud burp. Elizabeti fed Ava, but Ava was too polite to burp. I wondered what it would sound like if she did burp. What does a rock burp sound like? Mama changed the cloth wrapped around Obedi's bottom, and it was very messy. Elizabeti was very relieved to find that Ava's bottom was still clean. When Mama did her chores, she tied Obedi onto her back with a bright cloth called a kanga. You can see there are lots of kangas hanging from the line, the clothesline. And you can see if you look closely, Mama has Obedi tied onto her back. So maybe in Tanzania, the moms use kangas instead of backpacks for their babies. I wonder if they have strollers. Maybe you'll find out when you start learning about Tanzania with your family. When Elizabeti did her chores, she also tied Ava onto her back with a kanga. Mama had to help a little. That would be hard to do by yourself, to put the baby in the kanga and tie it. You don't want that baby to drop. Elizabeti went to visit her friend Raheli. Raheli laughed when she saw that Elizabeti had a rock for a doll. And look at that smile on Raheli's face. It doesn't look like a mean laugh, like she's making fun of Elizabeti. It looks like she just thinks that's a great idea. Never really thought of having a rock for a baby. In fact, Raheli didn't have a doll either. So when Elizabeti left, Raheli found her own rock, and she named it Malusi. Looks like she's trying to decide what to do next. And we know she'll probably go find a kanga somewhere. When Elizabeti got home, it was time for her to get water from the village well. She took Ava out of the kanga and laid her on the ground near some other rocks so she wouldn't be lonely. That's a very thoughtful mama. And there's that chicken again. I'm wondering if that chicken could be Elizabeti's pet. That chicken seems to be around a lot. Then Elizabeti wrapped the kanga into a small bundle, put it on the top of her head, and placed the water jug on top of the kanga. This was how she always carried water and other heavy things. So now we know a little bit about what Elizabeti does to help her family. It seems to be her job to go get the water from the well. This is a place where people do not have running water in their houses, and all of the families have to go to a well outside of the village to get water. And it looks like the kids have that job to help their families. Elizabeti soon returned with the water and took it to her sister Pendo inside the cooking hut where all the family's meals were made. So now we know that Elizabeti's family doesn't cook inside their regular house. They have a special little cabin, probably near their house, where they do all of their cooking. Then Elizabeti ran outside to get Ava. But Ava was gone. Elizabeti looked all around, but she could not find Ava. Where do you think Ava went? Could she crawl away? Do you think someone took Ava? Where is Ava? Mama found a new rock and gave it to Elizabeti. But Elizabeti shook her head when she saw it. The rock was just a rock. Pendo also brought Elizabeti a rock, but it wasn't Ava either. You can tell by Elizabeti's body language, she has her arms crossed over her chest. That's not my baby. A mama knows her own baby. Where is Ava? That's a mystery. Elizabeti was very sad. She sat quietly until it was time to help Pendo in the cooking hut. And don't you think Christy Hale does a good job of making Elizabeti look very sad? She's a very good artist. And look, the chicken even looks sad. The family had rice for dinner every night, and it was Elizabeti's job to put the pot of rice on the fire pit, which was made of 3 large stones. Elizabeti sadly filled the pot with water and set it on the stones to boil. But one of the stones wasn't a stone at all. It was, yep, you were right, it was Ava. Can you tell which stone is Ava? I'm sure Elizabeti can tell. Isn't it interesting that Elizabeti, and remember we said she was probably 5 or 6, has the job of putting the rice pot on a fire. You can talk to your parents about if that would be a job that a 5-year-old would have in your family. I think that things are very different in Tanzania compared to our country. Elizabeti called for Mama, and together they moved the pot of water and rolled Ava away from the fire. Although Ava was a bit dirty, she hadn't been hurt. Looks like a heavy pot. Pendo ran outside to get a new stone for the fire pit, which is just how poor Ava had become lost. Ava sat quietly while Elizabeti cleaned her off and hugged her. Oh, I'm glad that Ava turned up. Wasn't such a mystery after all. At bedtime, Mama sang a lullaby and rocked Obedi in her arms until he fell asleep. Elizabeti sang a lullaby too, but she fell asleep before Ava did. And you can notice that there are stars in the sky. It looks like they're rocking their babies to sleep outside. I wonder where the babies will actually sleep. Do they sleep outside? Mama covered Elizabeti and Ava with a blanket. She smiled, and she thought that one day Elizabeti would make a fine mother. Ava thought so too. Do you think so? I hope you liked Elizabeti's doll. It's one of my favorite books. I'm going to take a few minutes now to talk to your parents, to whatever grown-up is at your house taking care of you, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some fun things that your family might be able to do so that you can learn more about where Elizabeti lived and some of the customs and the different things that they do in her family and in her country. So moms and dads, I just made a list of, oh God, this mirror image stuff's not working really well for me. I wrote a few things down so that you can pause the video and maybe remember some ideas. First of all, it would be, I used this book for actually weeks worth of lessons in my kindergarten and preschool classes. There's so many extensions to the learning that you can do just using this simple book. First of all, if your children are interested and this is something that you think might go over in your family, you can use, go online, or if you have any geography books, you can look up Tanzania and find out where it is, talk about the climate and the cultures. I'm sure there are lots of beautiful pictures online where you get a feeling for what it looks like in the country, what people wear. You can find out about the resources available, challenges in the country, lots of things to talk about, and I'm sure lots of visual images for your family. One of the things you can talk about is the kanga, and this is a multi-use cloth in Africa. If you want to extend the activity, you can contact Judy Anderson. She actually lived in Africa, as you may know, for quite a while. And she taught me when our kids were little how to use a kanga. That was the way that babies were carried around in the part of Africa where she lived. And you could probably make a kanga out of a shawl or a tablecloth, any length of cloth. And really a fun way to teach your children to carry their dolls around. That would be a good dramatic play activity. And then another activity that I thought that I've used in my class, particularly when the weather's nice enough to be outside, is to extend the idea of fetching water, talking a little more about how that was a child's job in this part of the world, and then get different kinds of containers that the kids can fill with water and try to balance on their heads. I think they'll get kind of a better idea of how challenging that can be and how talented those children become at doing something that isn't as easy as it looks in the drawings. You can talk about chores and maybe talk about what your family expects their 5 and 6-year-olds to do as chores. Talk about the idea of age appropriateness really does vary from culture to culture. And another fun thing that you could do is to actually create a rock pit outside and have a family cookout. Maybe you do have a big old pan that you could put on the fire, and it sounded like the family in this story had rice for dinner every night. Maybe cook some rice. Then talk about what other things they might have had with their rice as you find out about Tanzania. Obviously, this book is fraught with the concept of imagination, and it's obvious in a culture where resources aren't available, stores aren't nearby. If you live in a village, kids have to use their imaginations in their play, and so this would be a great time to look around the house or outside for something that could be a baby. In the springtime, or I guess it was in the fall when I did this unit, I brought a giant zucchini from our garden, one of those that you just leave aside because it's way too big to eat. Anyway, I brought it in, and that was our baby for a couple of weeks while it lasted. And then you can certainly extend this idea where the kids can decide on other things that if you don't actually have the item or the dramatic play materials, they can make things up. Like, for example, if they want to play bus, they could line up chairs and use maybe some of their dishes from their pretend kitchens for steering wheels, all kinds of things where challenge them to use something other than the actual literal item. And then talking about imitation, that's the best way that kids learn. You can tell them things, but the best way is for them to watch you and to practice. And you can talk about all the different things that happen in your family where children are learning by watching their parents, and then extend the thought to what those activities that they're imitating might how they might apply to their lives later on as grown-ups, what kinds of skills they learn in the home that can be life applicable. And then, of course, comparing and contrasting all along this culture and what we do here in the United States. And I think it's probably really important to emphasize that there's not a better or worse, but it's just different. And it's a great way to expose kids to the way different things are happening in the world. And Elizabeti is a modern day child. It isn't someone that lived long ago when things were primitive in her area. This is the way a lot of people in Tanzania do live currently. And it would be at the same time that people are living in modern cities there. So lots of things to talk about with this book. I want to have a moment to apologize because this is the first time I've done any video work like this. And so I'm having, as I said a little earlier, a challenging time with this mirror image, and also making sure that kids get to see the pictures in the book. So give me a little feedback and let me know if this is something we should continue. Thanks. See you later.